So we've had Tarkov's patch 0.15 wipe for about a week now, and I thought this was the perfect time to do kind of like a debrief or a postmortem instead of wondering how these features are going to feel. Play the game for a week and then talk about how they actually feel and how they are going to affect the wipe. So if you're somebody that is thinking about getting back into Escape from Tarkov and you're wondering if this is a good time, or if you're somebody that just doesn't get to play Tarkov very much and you still haven't experienced some of these features yet, hopefully you'll get a good understanding of how they feel and how they will affect the wipe. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right in. So to start things off, we'll talk about the factory rework / expansion. This is awesome, honestly. This is just a complete reimagining of factory. Everything that you kind of like have come to expect out of factory is here, and you just get a whole lot more. You get some outside areas, all the textures are redone, and then it's kind of like an expansion. It's not a huge expansion to the map, but they extended Skybridge all the way down. There's tons more angles, there's more offices and drug labs, and tons of extra tunnels down in the basement. It just feels like Factory 2.0, which is I feel like is what they were going for there. I can totally understand if you're somebody that mained Factory or played it a lot, that you might not like this because you kind of knew what to expect. You knew the angles, you knew the rotations, and maybe you liked the charm of that map. But overall, I think it's great. I love when the world gets bigger. I love when these maps get bigger and there are new things and there's new flanks and rotations to make. And I love how this is a game where the more you know about a map, the better you can be, even if you don't have superior like flick or aim, as I don't. So I like learning new maps. I like learning map expansions, and I feel like they did a really good job here. The only thing, I've heard other people say this, and I feel this way as well, is the map feels pretty dark. It almost feels like Interchange if you've ever been standing under those giant skylights on Interchange where you see the sun coming down and it's bright right where you're standing, but if you look ahead of you, you can't really see anything. That's kind of how Factory is. Now that you can see the sun peeking through and there's actually outside areas, you know it's daytime outside, but it's actually really hard to see even in daytime with a flashlight. So I hope they maybe adjust the brightness, but overall, I think Factory Rework is awesome. Moving on to the new boss Partisan, and this is kind of all interlinked with the new Tripwire mechanic and the new PMC Karma mechanic. So this is all going to be kind of smashed together. Partisan himself is pretty cool. He's a loner. He doesn't have any guards. He can spawn on, so far I know, Customs, Woods, Shoreline, and Lighthouse, potentially more maps, but I know on those 4 maps. And we don't know, I'm not sure what his spawn chance is. I know it is increased or decreased depending on if there's someone with bad karma on the map. But he by himself is pretty cool. If he's there, he's going to booby trap all over the area. He's got a red beanie. That's one of the ways that you can identify him. Big pockets. Some people have pulled yellow or other colored labs key cards off him. He can have decent loot. It's pretty cool. Another boss that roams around from map to map. That's pretty cool. More importantly than him himself are the things that came with him, which is the karma system and the tripwires and booby traps. The karma system, as we understand it, is really simple, and that's because it is intentionally vague and they're not really telling us anything. You cannot see your own karma stat. They said that sometimes you're going to hear like a chime if your karma goes down or up, but they said that that's only going to happen sometimes. So there are instances of people kind of ratting or camping in a bush and you hear this like negative sounding sound, and we're assuming that means their karma went down. I've heard people saying they hear what they think is their karma going up, but we don't know what causes your karma to go up. We don't know what causes it to come down other than maybe ratting in a bush. I know there have been people who are just standing still messing with their keybinds and then lost karma, or they were AFK at the start of a raid or something like that. So personally, there's not a whole lot of opinion to give on this because it is intentionally vague. We don't really know what it's going to affect other than just, I guess, Partisan is going to spawn more if you've got negative karma. I personally am not a fan of this. I think karma and stuff like this should be a transparent thing. We should know what increases it and decreases it. We should know where we stand with the karma, but we don't really know if this is like just the beginning of this mechanic and they're going to utilize it further. What I will say, even though I'm not a fan of the system, what I will say is it's good to see they didn't go the route everybody didn't want them to go. The major fear going into karma was going to be that if you were a USEC, you can't kill other USECs, and that's going to, drop your karma, and that would essentially kill the game. And I agree, that would be a really bad thing for Tarkov if you weren't allowed to kill people of your same faction. That was the worry going into PMC Karma, and it looks like it's not that at all. It's just this other super vague thing that we're not sure how it's going to affect really anything at all. But that's the karma system. And then lastly, with the new boss is the new tripwires. And yes, they can be pretty toxic. There's a really distinct click when you set one off, and when you set one off, you have whatever the fuse time of the grenade is. So you have a few seconds to get out of the way. There can be some times where maybe you just ran out of stamina, you click it, you can't get away, or it was placed near a bush and now you're in the bush and you can't run, so you die. So there might be some toxic situations with it, but overall, it's not something where as soon as you hit it, you're just going to blow up. I personally see these as probably something that go along the lines of impact grenades or grenade launchers or the KS-23, where they're going to get used a lot initially. People are going to maybe doom that this is going to be the end of Tarkov, and then it'll end up being something that you don't run into very frequently. When you do, it's annoying or a minor inconvenience, or maybe you die, but it's not going to be like the end of Tarkov. But we'll see. I could be wrong. They could be literally everywhere by the end of the wipe, but that's kind of my guess so far. The next big feature is the map-to-map travel. Now, they decided to unveil this in a weird way with the marathon mode, which when you're selecting your map up in the top right, there's a marathon button and you can click that and you go into marathon mode. Marathon mode, you always start on ground zero and you always have to move through the maps in the same order to get to the map you want to go to. So shoreline is at the end. So if you want to do a shoreline raid in marathon mode, you have to start on ground zero and work your way through every single map in the game to get there. This is a separate mode, I'm assuming, just to kind of feature it, show how it works, and do some, quests. There's a couple of quests that give a ton of XP and really good rewards. And they said that when the marathon event ends, they're just going to fold this kind of into the main game. And I think overall it functions well, where you go up to the transit point, which they are pretty cool to find. You are allowed to pay to deposit some of your gear into your stash before you go to the next raid. Then you start a timer and you go to the next raid. You can even do it with other people, not in your team as well. It allows for 5 or 6 people to go at one time. So I think that's really cool that they're allowing people to group up in raid, kind of emergent gameplay, and then go together. It functions well. It's really cool. It's just that I still don't really see why anyone would do this. Once it's folded into the main game, you go through this menu, you have to pay money to put stuff in your stash, and then you're just put into a queue where you have to wait to go into the next raid with maybe half of your meds, some of your armor chunked up, not all the ammo that you need, and you go into the next raid. So maybe for an achievement or for a quest, I can see why people would do this, but past that, I don't think there's a draw where you could just go to your stash, deposit everything for free, re-up on your meds and all your ammo, and then go to the next map that you want to go to. So we'll see. Once again, jury's still out to see how they fold this into the main game. It functions well. Like, there weren't any bugs with it that I saw. It's a cool mechanic. I just don't know why people would necessarily use it, but we'll see how it goes and how they kind of continue to incentivize that use. There were a ton of quality of life things that came into the game. Bipods are actually functional now, and you can mount a weapon or kind of brace a weapon onto a wall or a corner. These things are both going to be niche things, especially the weapon mounting on walls. It does seem like when you're mounted up on a wall, it does reduce your recoil a little bit, but maybe you're a little more exposed than you would like to be. The meta in Tarkov has taken those angles incredibly tight, or not even holding angles at all. And so I don't know how often this will be used, but I'm not at all bashing it. I'm glad it's in the game. I think it's cool. And I think the little visual indicator in the bottom left is cool as well. Bipods for sniping will definitely be used more frequently than that, I think. Still maybe a little bit more of a niche thing, but it's really cool to see bipods for, some of the bolt actions and even some of the LMGs. So the PKP or the new M60, you'll be able to put the bipods on and actually deploy them. So that's cool. We got a few new hideout zones, which is cool. The gear rack, which is as you upgrade it, you get more mannequins that you can either display cool loot just for aesthetic purposes, or you can basically build out a kit on these mannequins and then hot swap them. So if you're waiting for your buddy to get out of a raid, you can build, I think all the way leveled up, you get 3 mannequins. You can build 3 kits, and then every time you die, you can just hot swap all that gear onto you. And maybe it's a faster way to gear up, which is cool. And the cultist circle, which, I haven't data mined or seen anything on the back end of this on if there's a way to min-max it yet. I'm sure there will be, but you build the cultist circle, you put in valuable items, whatever you want. You can sacrifice 5 things. You do that, you wait 8 to 12 hours, and then the cultist brought you back some cool stuff. There is a chance if you hit a certain dollar amount threshold, it seems like, I don't know what that is yet, you've got a 25% chance to get an item that is needed for an active task or an unfinished hideout zone. So it's kind of like the gamble on the scav box, but a little bit more pointed towards potentially things you actually need, which is kind of cool. They did a whole lot of stuff to the AI in the PvE mode. I haven't played PvE, so I'm not sure. Of course, we got a load of new guns and some new armors and some new bags and stuff like that, like we always get. The Desert Eagles are really cool. They sound great, of course. The animations are cool. The SR3 is something I'm really excited about, but I haven't got a chance to use yet. It is basically a beefed up SMG that shoots the VAL and VSS ammo. I'm excited about that. The Uzis and their many varieties are a really fun addition to kind of like the 9mm category. I'm excited to use more of those. And then of course the big beefy M60, which is a 7.62x5.1 LMG, so 100 round mags of M80. It's gonna be insane. Couple of tweaks to some guns, added some new ammunitions, nothing out of the ordinary there. Some changes to some of the recoil of some guns. I am hearing a lot of reports that a lot of the 7.62x51 guns, like the SA58 or the Black MDR, got nerfed. I haven't been able to use those guns yet, but that was definitely the meta caliber last wipe. And if we know anything about BSG, it's they like to nerf things that get used most. So I've heard some people say that 7.62x39 guns have gotten a slight buff, which that was the old meta that was nerfed to the ground. So we see how this merry-go-round continues to go. I haven't used some of those guns, but that's what I've heard. Some more quality of life improvements. We got the smooth zoom on the LPVOs, which are low-powered variable optics. So not every optic has this. The Elcan and the Valde are two that do not have the smooth zoom, because I think in real life as well, those just snap back and forth between 1 and 4x or 1 and 6x respectively. But things like the Voodoo and the Tango and a lot of the bigger scopes that basically never get used, like the March Tactical, now actually have smooth zooming all the way. You can still click and just to go from min power to max power if you want to, but the default bind is alt scroll wheel. This is really nice. It's really cool, especially if you're holding an angle, but I will say that it like eases in. So basically it starts slow and then speeds up, which can kind of play some mental tricks on your brain where you scroll wheel a little bit and it starts really slow, so you think you have to scroll wheel more, but then as it speeds up, now you scroll too much and you go past, so it's not quite as responsive as I would like it to be, but I'm not trying to split hairs. I still think it will have places where it's usable, and the fact that you can still snap back and forth is honestly surprising. I didn't think they were going to let us do that, but now you have both and you can kind of set it up however you want. That's pretty cool. One of my favorite quality of life things that came to the game is the ability to select which grenade you want to throw. Now in your hotbar, it's showing you what grenade you're going to throw next if you hit G. And if you hold G and scroll wheel, you can scroll between all the grenades you have in your pockets or your rig. This is huge for now. Maybe you can bring a few frag grenades and a few flash grenades or smoke grenades, and you can select them. I think that that makes that whole experience much, much better instead of just pressing G and hoping to pick the right grenade. Some other noteworthy quality of life updates are they changed a few tasks like setup and long road, making them easier, which is great. They increased the damage of some 7.62x39 rounds, 5.45 rounds, and 9x21 rounds. And they slightly reduced the damage of some 5.56 rounds. I think a lot of people are scratching their heads at that, me as well. But it is nice to see some of the damage buffs to like 5.45, for example. The other big things are now there is absolutely no class 6 armor available to buy or barter at all. None of it is available on the flea market, and there are no ways to purchase it from the traders as well. You can still find these class 6 armors like the Bastion Slap Helmet or any of the armors or plates in Raid and Kiba or on bosses, but you're not going to be able to purchase those at all anymore. And they changed the flea market with ammo, where now all ammo with less than 42 penetration is allowed on the flea market, and all with 42 or above is not allowed on the flea market. You know, we'll see how this plays out over the course of a wipe, but I think if anything, the consistency of, okay, here's a number, below that you can list it and above it you can't, is at least a little bit helpful, because in the past we were like, why can I buy this ammo on the flea market but not this, because the stats are this, that, or the other. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's also very important to note that the flea market is still non-found in raid, meaning you can list things on the flea market that are not found in raid. So if you put it in your secure container, you die with it, you can still list it. And you can kind of flea market arbitrage, which means you can buy something directly from the traders and then immediately just list that thing you bought for a higher price on the flea market. A lot of the people that are higher level are doing that right now with high tier ammos and stuff like that. So whether you love it or you hate it, that's how the game is right now. They reworked some animations. They feel a little goofy, but we'll get used to them. They reworked some graphics. The skybox looks great now. They added FSR 3.0, which will help a lot of people get some more frames. And then the last big thing is the sound. We have to talk about the sound. There's a lot of technical jargon in the patch notes. You know, who really knows what any of it means? All we know is they messed with the sound again. They messed with a lot of the sounds, and they also messed with the active headsets. Every headset in the game now sounds different to what it did last wipe. And one of the things that we can pull from what they've done is they've basically isolated different channels. So now the ambient noise seems like it can be manipulated up or down separate from footstep noise or gunshot noise, which is why things kind of feel weird. A lot of people are saying the game feels quiet. It definitely does feel quieter, but the ambient noise seems to stay up and the active headsets just feel different. So it is nearly impossible to say if it is better or worse. Tarkov's sound still remains very bad, and it has always been very bad. So don't think that this saved it, but I don't know if it made it worse or better. There are some situations where I feel like a very specific situation, ooh, that felt better, but then we still have completely silent grenades, people just appearing, or you're watching somebody and the audio that you're seeing of them doesn't really make sense. And it's really hard to judge if things are better or worse because the tools we're using, i.e. when we have the active headsets on, completely manipulate the sound differently than we're used to them manipulating them. So it is nearly impossible to determine exactly what has changed and how it has changed and if it's benefiting or not. But this is definitely not the Jesus patch for sound. There are still a lot of bugs. Namely, one of the biggest ones right now is the silent scav grenades. You just blow up, and that is a very frustrating situation. So once again, I'm no software dev, but sound seems to be the bane of their existence. We got a few anti-cheat updates, but if you've been on Twitter at all, you can see that the cheaters are very much out in full force. And that is pretty much the Tarkov patch. I think it's really worth noting very quickly at the end here that Arena also got a patch and got a wipe. And the TLDR of that is they absolutely cooked. And if you at any point saw the potential in Arena, I would highly recommend you go back. Now that the two games are linked, now that you can create custom presets in each kind of like class of character, and now that there are actual weapon unlocks, and the more you use a weapon, the more attachments you use, there are more reasons than ever to continue playing Arena, and those benefits extend over to Tarkov. So even in just a few games of Arena, my opinion of it completely flipped. I was always hoping that this game would succeed, but also very vocal about its glaring weaknesses. And it seems like with the custom presets, with the connection to Tarkov, and with the new armory system and the weapon unlocks, they really took a lot of the biggest feedback to heart. The sound, still terrible. The netcode, still terrible. But once again, if you ever wanted to like Arena or saw its potential, I would highly recommend you go back and take a look. So that is patch point 15. That is the Tarkov wipe. Overall, these summer wipes are normally kind of smaller ones. I know the patch notes are long and feel really dense, but at the end of the day, we got a new boss that you're not going to see every raid. We got, some new mechanics like Karma and Tripwires. You're not going to see them every raid. You're not playing Factory every raid. So for the most part, there's not a whole lot of meat here that's going to drastically affect each and every one of your raids, but that is okay. Most of these things came into the game in a working state, and we'll see about the bigger things like map-to-map travel and stuff like that. It's been fun to kind of reset everything, and hopefully if you get bored of Tarkov, Arena will actually be something that is fun to do maybe here in a few weeks or a month or something like that. But that is the breakdown. I hope it helped. Once again, I hope if you're thinking about hopping back in, or if you just don't get to play very often, that this breakdown kind of helped you understand what is coming in with this patch. If you liked the video, think about dropping a like, commenting down below, or subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I stream Escape from Tarkov almost every single day. My links will be down below. I stream on Twitch and here on YouTube. Our Discord is a great place to be if you're looking for people to play Tarkov with or ask some questions. That link is down below as well. Thank you again for stopping by, and I will definitely see y'all on the next one.